Hey everyone, it's Oshu. With the arrival of the Rivals of Aether combo video contest, I thought it would be a suitable time to create a green screen tutorial. I'll guide you through the steps of modding your game and recording it with Greenscreen. For software, you're going to want to have access to an image editing program that allows transparency, and to be using video editing software that supports color keying. I presume you have access to these already, but if not, there's a list of free image and video editing programs in the description. I would recommend that you get a feel for how those work before proceeding with the tutorial. You'll also want to download OBS, as that is the screen recording software we will be using in this tutorial. If you have access to another screen recording software that supports lossless recording, feel free to use that instead. You'll also want to download Gem1 Gardener's modding tool from the link in the description. First, you're going to want to duplicate your game folder and extract the files from Gem1 Gardener's modding tool into the new game folder. Run extract.bat and you'll find a new folder in the directory called Files. Open it and click on the Textures folder, not the Sprites folder. These contain the sprites compact in large sprite sheets, which makes them easier to edit for this purpose. Look through the sprites and find the stage that you are looking for. Most of the stages have all their sprites contained in one sprite sheet, with the exception of Ethereal Gates, which takes its background sprites from the opening screen. Open the stage sprite sheet in your image editing program. Now you'll have to decide what kind of green screen you want, whether it isolates the characters or parts of the foreground. Isolating the characters is a tad simpler, as it just requires identifying the background sprites, filling them in green or another solid color, and deleting everything else. Isolating parts of the foreground mainly just involves keeping different parts of the foreground while keeping the background green or a solid color, but be careful that you don't remove animations or other parts of the foreground. Keep a reference image handy if you're unsure. Create a new folder in the game folder called Mods, and create a new subfolder called Textures and save your PNG in there with the same name. Once that's finished, go back into your game folder and run inject.bat. If done correctly, you should find your stage now has a green screen. Like I mentioned before, we're going to be using OBS Studio for recording the screen. While you are free to use whatever recording software you like, I'd strongly recommend using OBS as it supports lossless video recording and smaller file sizes, which makes keying so much easier. Open up the settings and go into the video tab. Make sure that your output and canvas resolutions are the same to prevent scaling artifacts. A frame rate of 60 is recommended, but you can use 30 if your PC can't handle 60. In the output settings, go to the recording tab and set the output mode to advanced. Set your container to MOV and the encoder to X264. Set the rate control to CBR, and don't worry about the bitrate. Set the CPU usage preset to ultrafast, and in the X264 options, enter QP equals 0. Finally, in the advanced settings, set the color format to I444, the color space to 709, and the color range to partial. We're nearly ready to start recording our game. Boot into your vanilla version of Rivals and make sure that your game is in full screen mode by going into Options, Display, and setting the screen size to full screen. Then, find the replay with the clip. Before the clip starts, pause the game and make sure the HUD is off. Go into OBS and set up a new game capture source. Set it to capture specific window, select Rivals and make sure that capture cursor is unchecked. Now you're ready to start recording, so hit record and play the clip through. Once that has finished, open up the modded version of the game and navigate to the same clip and repeat the process again. Now that recording has finished, we have two passes, a default and a green screen pass. Let's head into our video editing software to composite these. This part of the tutorial might be a little bit more freehand, as the process really just depends on how color keying works in your specific software. So if you don't know how to color key in your software, I'd recommend looking up a tutorial as well as how to work the timeline. I'm going to be using Adobe After Effects as that's the software that I'm the most comfortable with. Import your two new video files into your project. Place the green screen footage on top of the default footage. Color key out the green. As I mentioned, this should be pretty easy as we are recording lossless, so there shouldn't be any extra shades of green lying around it. With the background keyed out, we can now align the two passes by shifting the green screen clip time to match the default screen. Now we're pretty much done. Hit play to make sure the two don't become desynced and you should be good. But wait, you might notice that the color of the smoke is off. Unfortunately, this is a common frustration for many editors as there's no easy way to outright remove this. After Effects has a neat little effect called Change to Color, which allows us to simply select the color of the smoke and set it to change hue and saturation. The fog is slightly more opaque and grey, but it's not fart colored, so that's a start. This is pretty much the extent that I would go about changing the smoke, but there are many other ways around it. Chroma keying affects a wider range of shades of that color, so you may find that applying a chroma key to the background alters the transparency of the smoke, making it less apparent. In Adobe products, I would go about this by using an effect called key light. Be careful though, as it may alter the transparency of the characters if the characters' skins contain the color of the background. If you're really about it, you can mud out the smoke entirely and even record a luma matte for it, which accounts for transparency, but that far extends this tutorial. You may find effects similar to the change of color effect in other free editing softwares like DaVinci Resolve and HitFilm, so I would recommend watching some tutorials on those softwares and doing a bit of personal research. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Before we end off, if you run into any issues regarding the process, make sure to check the pinned comment, as that's where I'll be listing things like fixes and issues that I may have glossed over in the tutorial. If you need any extra help, join the Rivals of Aether editing Discord. There's various channels for resources and advice, and also a channel dedicated to 7 Locos combo video contest, link in the description.